She said it with a kind of teasing that didn't belong in the air that late. The words hung between us. Warm, deliberate, and I couldn't tell if it was a joke or a warning. Her name was Elena, and the moment she smiled, the room felt smaller. Not because of her beauty, though she had that, but because she noticed things. The way my hand tightened around the mug. The way I avoided looking too long. She noticed, and for some reason, she let me. I'd only come to help move boxes from her garage. That's what I told myself, anyway. My mother's older sister. She was supposed to be just family. But now, standing in her kitchen, the late sun catching the edge of her collarbone, I couldn't remember why that line had ever felt clear. She wore a loose white shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a silver ring tapping lightly against her glass. Her hair was tied back, but a few strands had slipped free, brushing her cheek each time she turned her head. "Sit," she said, nodding toward the counter. "You've been standing there like you're about to run." I laughed, though my throat was dry. Didn't want to intrude. Her eyes lingered on me a second too long. "If I didn't want you here, you'd know." It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. The quiet confidence. The soft challenge tucked inside. She turned to pour more wine, the sound of it almost too loud in the silence between us. The house smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and something deeper. Her perfume, maybe the kind that stays in a room long after someone leaves. Outside, a storm was building. You could hear it in the wind pressing against the windows. She slid the glass across the counter toward me, her fingers brushing mine. Not by accident, not entirely, at least. It wasn't a full touch, more like the echo of one. "You're quiet tonight," she said. "I'm trying not to say something stupid." Her laugh, low, genuine, broke through the tension for half a second, only to make it worse. "That's smart. Most men your age don't think before they speak. Most women your age don't make it this hard to think at all," I said before I could stop myself. Her head tilted slightly. A pause. Then that faint smile again. Not amused, not angry, just aware. "You shouldn't say things like that," she said softly. "I know. But you will anyway." Another pause. The clock ticked once. The air changed. I could hear my heartbeat somewhere behind my ribs. Too loud, too fast. She turned away to adjust something on the stove that didn't need adjusting. The light caught the curve of her neck. Her voice came quieter this time. "You always look at people like you're trying to remember them." "Maybe I am." Elena looked back at me, meeting my eyes just long enough to make it clear she wasn't sure what to do with that. Neither was I. A faint rumble rolled through the sky, thunder far away. Her ring tapped the counter again. Tap, tap, small, steady, like she was thinking through something she couldn't say aloud. Then she smiled, slower this time. "You can help me carry the rest of the boxes later. For now, stay." I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, the back door creaked open. Wind swept in, rain spilling across the tiles. Elena's smile didn't fade. Her voice dropped low. "I told you," she said. "I's never leaving mine. You're not leaving until I say so." And in that second, I couldn't tell if I was trapped, or finally exactly where I wanted to be. The rain didn't stop. It pressed against the windows, heavy and constant, until the sound became part of the silence itself. We'd moved from the kitchen to the living room, where the lights were softer, one lamp, the kind with a shade that threw everything in gold. Elena sat across from me, legs folded beneath her, glass still half full. I could tell she wasn't used to company after dark. The way she moved, slow, precise, like every gesture had been practiced in solitude. She asked about school, work, the usual things people ask when they're trying not to ask what they really want to. I told her I'd been working at a local hardware store while taking night classes. I didn't tell her I'd started volunteering at the shelter mostly because she'd mentioned she used to, years ago, before her divorce. "You still paint?" I asked. She looked surprised. "You remember that?" "I remember the smell of turpentine in your garage." Her smile flickered, almost embarrassed. "That was a long time ago. I stopped after Mark left. Her ex-husband." She said it quietly, but it sat between us anyway. I'd never met him. Only heard my mother whisper once that he'd left her for someone younger. That word, younger, felt strange in my chest now. I thought you loved painting, I said. I did, she said. But when someone leaves, you stop doing the things they used to watch you do. Makes it easier not to think about them. The truth in that hung heavy. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. Instead, I looked at her hands, resting on her knee, fingers bare except for the silver ring. Her nails were short, uneven, like she'd been biting them. You ever been in love? She asked suddenly. I almost laughed. I don't think I've lived long enough to know what that means. She tilted her head, studying me. That's probably the smartest thing you've said all night. Her tone was teasing, but her eyes softened. For a moment, she looked her age. Not because of lines or time, but because of everything she'd carried quietly. A branch scratched against the window. The storm kept talking. She stood to close it, and when she leaned forward, her shoulder brushed mine. Just that, a light, passing touch, but I felt the warmth of it long after she moved away. You should get going soon, she murmured. I nodded, though neither of us moved. Her hand rested on the back of the couch as she looked toward the rain. I could see the faint rise and fall of her breath. She turned back slowly, close enough now that I could smell her perfume again. Faint jasmine and something sharper underneath. Elena, I started. She met my eyes. Don't. But she didn't step back. I didn't either. Her fingers grazed my shoulder. Not a full touch, just a test. Like she was waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. Something changed in her face, surprise maybe. Then she drew her hand away, tucking it into her sleeve. Good night, she said, her voice soft but final. I turned to leave, but when I reached the door, I heard her whisper. So quiet it almost got lost in the rain. You make it very hard to be careful. And I knew then, she wasn't asking me to leave. She was asking herself to. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. She'd texted asking if I could check her porch light. It flickers when it rains, she'd written, but when I got there, the sky was clear, and the light worked fine. She opened the door before I could knock. I didn't think you'd actually come, she said. You asked. Elena smiled faintly, stepping aside to let me in. She wore a soft gray sweater that hung loose on one shoulder, her hair still damp from a shower. I caught myself staring. Not at her exactly, but at the way she avoided looking at me while tucking her hair back. We talked about nothing. The weather, her neighbor's new dog, a movie she'd watched halfway through before losing interest. Small talk, stretched thin over everything we weren't saying. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. A name flashed, Lydia, my mother. Elena froze for half a second before silencing it. She probably just wanted to ask about the boxes, she said quickly. But the air changed. I realized then how dangerous this was, how small the distance between us really was. I should probably, I started. Stay, she said, almost too quickly. Then, quieter. Just for a minute. The house was warm, the air too still. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the sound of her ring sliding against the rim of her mug. She sat on the couch, crossing her legs, then glanced at the space beside her. I hesitated before sitting down. Not close, but not far enough either. You don't have to look at me like that, she said softly. Like what? Like you're waiting for me to stop you. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Her gaze dropped to my hand resting on my knee. Slowly, she reached out, her fingers hovering just above mine, not touching, just there. You're too young to make this kind of mistake, she whispered. Maybe you're not too old to want to. She let out a short, breathy laugh, part disbelief, part surrender. Then, footsteps. We both froze. Her sister's voice echoed faintly from outside. Elena? You home? Elena shot up, panic flashing in her eyes. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the hallway. We stood pressed close, hidden behind the doorframe as her sister's shadow passed through the kitchen. I could feel Elena's heartbeat against my sleeve. Fast, uneven. Her breath brushed my jaw when she whispered, "Don't say anything." I nodded, though the closeness made it hard to breathe at all. Her sister called once more, then the front door shut. Silence again. Elena stayed there, her body still inches from mine. Neither of us moved. Finally, she looked up, eyes wide, caught between fear and something else entirely. Her hand rested on my chest, barely touching, as if confirming I was real. "This can't happen," she said, voice shaking. "I know." But neither of us stepped back. Outside, a car engine started. The sound faded. Inside, the quiet pressed harder. Her hand stayed where it was. My breath caught. And in that suspended second, the one right before something breaks, I knew if she leaned in even slightly, I wouldn't stop her. She didn't. She just stood there, close enough to feel everything we weren't ready to name. It happened 3 nights later, late enough that no one had an excuse to stop by, late enough that everything unsaid finally had space to breathe. Elena was in the garden when I arrived, wearing an old sweatshirt and holding a mug of tea that had long gone cold. The air smelled like wet soil and jasmine. Her porch light flickered again, the same one she'd pretended needed fixing. "You shouldn't keep showing up," she said when she saw me. But she didn't sound like she meant it. "You keep asking me to." She looked away, tracing the rim of her mug. "You think I don't know what this looks like?" I stepped closer. "I think you care more about what it looks like than what it is." She laughed once, soft, tired. "You talk like someone who's never had to live with consequences." I wanted to tell her that I'd been living with them since the first night she smiled at me that way, but I didn't. Instead, I reached out and brushed a leaf from her shoulder. My fingers lingered longer than they should have. "Elena!" She turned slow. Our faces were close, too close for the kind of conversation we were pretending to have. The porch light blinked again, throwing light across her eyes, her mouth. She didn't move. "You make it hard to breathe," I said quietly. She set the mug down on the railing, her hands trembling just enough for me to notice. "You have no idea how wrong this is." "Then why aren't you walking away?" Her jaw tightened. For a second, I thought she would. But instead, she took a step closer. Just one. Until her breath touched my collar. "I'm not good for you," she whispered. "I didn't come here looking for good." Her hand came up, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. The touch was small, tender, but something in it broke her guard. She kept her hand there a moment too long, then let it fall, fingertips grazing the side of my neck. Her voice dropped. "You think I don't feel this? Every time you walk in, I try to tell myself I don't. And then you look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you already know." The quiet between us pulsed. My heart wouldn't settle. I could feel the warmth of her skin, the faint tremor of restraint running through both of us. She exhaled, a shaky, unfinished sound. "I'm tired of pretending this doesn't exist. So stop." Her eyes closed. For a moment, she leaned forward, just enough that I felt the edge of her breath on my lips. Then the wind picked up, slamming the screen door behind us. She flinched back like she'd been burned. "Elena, don't," she said, but her voice cracked halfway through. I stepped forward anyway. "Tell me to leave and I will." She stared at me, the kind of look that comes right before surrender or disaster. Then, barely above a whisper, "I don't want you to." And before I could answer, she reached for me. Hand against my chest, trembling, her eyes closing like she already knew what would happen next. The next morning, I told myself not to go back. I even made it half a day without checking my phone. Then her message came through. Just 3 words, "We need to talk." When I got there, she was standing by the window, light cutting through the blinds in thin, sharp lines across her face. Her voice was calm, but the kind of calm that means something's coming. "I talked to your mother," she said. My stomach dropped. "What?" "She called last night. She asked if I'd seen you lately." I tried to read her tone, whether she'd confessed anything, whether my mother knew, but she didn't give it away. "What did you tell her?" "That you helped me with the boxes again." She looked at me then, eyes steady but tired. "She asked if you'd been staying late." I said no. "So you lied." "I protected you." That word, protected, hit harder than I expected. She walked past me toward the kitchen, close enough that her shoulder brushed my arm. The smell of her perfume followed, soft and deliberate. "Elena," I said quietly, "what's really going on?" She set a glass down too hard. Cracked at the rim. She didn't flinch. "You think I don't know what people would say? A woman my age. My sister's son. Not by blood. Doesn't matter. You think that changes anything?" Her voice shook. She turned, eyes bright, hands gripping the edge of the counter like she needed something solid. "You don't understand what it's like to be looked at. Not like you see me, but like everyone else would. Like I've lost my mind." I stepped closer instinctively. "You haven't." She laughed. A single breath that broke halfway. "Then why does it feel like I have?" Silence filled the space between us. The air was thick, close. Her fingers trembled as she brushed a strand of hair from her face, and I caught her wrist before she could pull away. "Elena," I said, "you're not the only one who's scared." Her eyes softened, but only for a heartbeat. Then she pulled her hand free, pressing it to her chest as if steadying herself. "There's something else," she said quietly. "You should know before this goes any further." I waited. She hesitated, then whispered, "Mark came by last week. Her ex-husband." I blinked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "He wanted to talk. He said he's moving back. Wants to make things right." Something cold slid through my chest. "You're thinking of going back to him," I said. Not a question. Her silence was answer enough. I stepped back. She stepped forward. The movement brought us face to face again. Close enough that I could see the faint tremor in her lower lip. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "You make me feel alive, and that terrifies me." I swallowed hard. "Then maybe it's too late to stop." She looked at me like she wanted to believe it, like she almost did. Her hand lifted, hovering just above my chest, then fell away before it could touch. "Elena!" Her voice cracked on my name. "If we don't stop now, we won't." Neither of us moved. The blinds rattled in the wind. The cracked glass on the counter reflected her face, split down the middle. And when she finally met my eyes again, I knew we were past the point of pretending. It was almost midnight when she called. Her voice was quiet, not shaking, but too calm to be ordinary. "Can you come?" she asked. There was no reason left to pretend I wouldn't. When I arrived, the lights were low. The rain had come back again, soft and steady against the windows. Elena stood near the table, arms folded like she'd been waiting longer than she wanted to admit. "I told him no," she said before I could speak. "Mark, I told him not to come back." Something in her voice broke at the edges, like the relief hurt more than the choice itself. "I shouldn't have asked you here," she added, "but I needed to see you once without lying to myself." I took a step closer, then another. She didn't move. "You don't have to explain," I said. "I do," she whispered, "because after tonight, I don't know if I'll ever be able to again." The air between us was electric, not loud, just charged. She reached out, her hand brushing the side of my jaw. The touch was light, uncertain, but it burned straight through me. Her eyes searched mine, cautious, wanting, terrified all at once. "You think this is love?" I shook my head. "I think it's real." She exhaled, slow. Her thumb moved along my cheek, barely a trace. "Real isn't always enough." I caught her wrist before she could pull away. "It's all I've got." The words hung there, too heavy to take back. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath when she finally said, "If I cross this line, I don't get to pretend anymore." I didn't answer. I just moved closer, slow enough that she could stop me. She didn't. Her hand slid down to my shoulder, her body leaning into mine, the space between us gone. The scent of rain clung to her hair. Every breath, every small tremor, felt like something fragile about to shatter. "Elena," I said, my voice barely audible, "tell me to stop." Her eyes closed. A pause. Then a whisper, "I can't." We didn't kiss. Not yet. We just stood there, her forehead against mine, our breaths tangled, the silence breaking apart between us. "This isn't fair to you," she said, voice unsteady. "Maybe fairness isn't what this is about." She smiled faintly, the kind that comes with surrender and sorrow all at once. "You'll hate me for this one day." "I already tried," I said. "It didn't work." Her fingers brushed the back of my neck, trembling, then stilled. "Then this is it," she whispered. And in that instant, that suspended second before everything either began or ended, the world outside vanished. The only sound was the rain. The only truth was her pulse against my hand. We both knew it couldn't last. But for the first time, neither of us looked away. Morning light came soft and thin, filtering through the half-closed blinds. The storm had passed. Everything smelled new, rain, wood, and the faint sweetness of her perfume still in the air. Elena stood by the window, barefoot, one hand wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Her hair was loose, her sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder. When she turned, she didn't look startled to see me there. Just quiet, like we'd both been waiting for the stillness to arrive. "Did you sleep at all?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "I stopped trying around for." I nodded. Neither of us rushed to fill the silence. The world outside was finally calm. The kind of calm that comes after something's been decided, even if you don't have the words for it yet. She came to sit beside me on the couch, close enough that our knees brushed. Her fingers found the edge of the blanket I'd pulled over her sometime in the night. "I used to think it was impossible," she said, "that you could feel this much and still want to walk away. Are you?" Her eyes lifted. "Walking away?" I shook my head. "Still feeling this much?" She laughed under her breath, quiet, disbelieving. "Too much." I reached for her hand, not to make a point, just to stop her from tucking it under her arm like she always did when she was nervous. Her skin was warm, soft from sleep, her pulse steady under my thumb. "I don't want to pretend anymore," I said. She leaned back against the couch, letting out a long breath. "You make it sound easy." "It's not, but it's real." For a long moment, she studied me, the kind of look that weighs possibility against fear. Then she moved closer, her head resting against my shoulder. The sound of her breathing evened out, slow and steady. "I spent so many years trying not to be seen," she said quietly. "And then you walked in like it was the simplest thing in the world. I wasn't trying to fix you." "I know." Her hand turned in mine, fingers intertwining. "That's why I let you stay." We stayed like that for a while. No words, just the hum of quiet understanding between us. Outside, the sun pushed through the clouds, lighting the water drops on the glass. Eventually, she looked up at me, eyes tired but lighter. "What happens now?" I smiled. "We stop running." She tilted her head, studying my face like she was trying to memorize it. Then, gently, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to mine. Not a kiss, not quite, but something deeper. The kind of touch that says, "I'm here. I'm not afraid anymore." When she pulled back, she whispered, "Then stay for breakfast." And for the first time, there was no hesitation in either of us. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?